My dear ones, before I open this chapter of my life to you, let me remind you, life is never as simple as it looks. Families carry secrets, hearts carry scars, and sometimes the smallest box can hold the biggest truth. What you're about to hear changed everything in my family. So stay with me till the very end of this story, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Like this video and share it with someone you love. And when you're done listening, leave me a comment. I read every single one. And I want to know what you think. Now let me begin. It was a damp October evening in my old house in Surrey. The rain was falling in thin sheets against the tall windows, dripping down the glass like tears. The kind of night that makes the air heavy, the walls echo, and the silence inside louder than the storm outside. I was sitting in my armchair near the fireplace, knitting a scarf for my grandson, Oliver. The flames in the grate flickered shadows across the room, stretching long and thin, and every so often, the grandfather clock in the hallway would chime, reminding me of how slowly the night was passing. My son, Daniel, had married Sophie 5 years ago. At first, when she came into our family, I thought she was perfect for him. She was sweet, polite, careful with her words, and always smiled. She would call me Mum, brew me a cup of tea in the mornings, and even pretend to listen to my stories about the old days. For a while, I thought to myself, perhaps I've been blessed. Perhaps my son has found a wife who will hold this family together when I am gone. But, oh, how quickly time shows you the truth. It started small. Little complaints about the food, subtle remarks about the house being too old-fashioned, whispers with Daniel late at night when they thought I couldn't hear. She wanted things, newer things, shinier things. She looked at my belongings, not with respect, but with calculation. Her eyes became sharp, restless, always wondering, not out of curiosity, but out of envy. And then there was the jewelry box. I kept it in the wardrobe in my bedroom. It wasn't just any box. It was an oak chest, old but strong, with brass edges and a little lock at the front. My mother gave it to me on my wedding day. She pressed it into my hands and whispered, "This is not just for jewels, my darling. This box holds our family's story. Guard it, protect it. One day it may guard you in return." For years it sat hidden, quietly waiting. I didn't open it often. The jewelry inside wasn't the kind you'd parade around at parties. Some pieces were valuable, yes, but most were keepsakes. My father's pocket watch, a locket with a photograph, a brooch passed down from my grandmother. But beneath those trinkets were letters, folded photographs, and one secret I had never spoken aloud. That box was not about gold or diamonds. It was about history, memory, and things too heavy to carry without locking them away. But Sophie, she noticed it. Every time I opened my wardrobe, her eyes flickered to it. Every time I dusted my room, I could feel her gaze follow my hand as it brushed over the brass lock. She pretended not to care, but greed has a way of showing itself, even when you think you're hiding it. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that perhaps she was only curious. But deep inside, my heart knew. One day, she would try to take it, and that day came sooner than I expected. That evening, the rain had quieted, but the air was still heavy, thick with something unspoken. Daniel had gone upstairs early, exhausted after a long day at work. Sophie had followed him, or so I thought. I remained downstairs, finishing Oliver's scarf. I remember thinking about how quickly children grow, how once you hold them in your arms, and then in a blink, they're taller than you. It made me smile. It gave me comfort. But then, I heard it, the faintest creak on the landing above. Too soft to be Daniel. He was a heavy-footed man, too deliberate to be the wind. I froze. My knitting needles paused mid-stitch. My ears, old as they are, have learned to catch the smallest sounds, the sounds others dismiss. And in that silence, I heard my bedroom door creak open. I didn't move. I didn't call out. Instead, I pulled the blanket higher over my lap, closed my eyes halfway, and pretended to doze in my chair. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Sophie. She was trying to be silent, but the floorboards betrayed her. I could picture her face in the dim light, cautious, tense, her lips pressed tightly together as she made her way to the wardrobe. My heart thudded inside my chest. Louder than the rain, louder than the clock, she opened the wardrobe. I knew it by the scrape of the hinges, the way the wood groaned in protest. And then, silence. She had found it, the jewelry box. I didn't have to look. I could feel her excitement from across the room, the way her hands must have trembled as she slid it out from its hiding place. I imagined her eyes lighting up, her smile forming as she clutched it to her chest. She thought she had won. She thought she had stolen from an old woman too weak to stop her. But she was wrong. I remained perfectly still as she carried the box to the edge of my bed and sat down. I could hear her breathing, shallow, quick. She placed the box in her lap and reached into her pocket. And that's when I realized she had the key. I had kept it hidden in a small tin inside my sewing basket, tucked beneath spools of thread and scraps of fabric. Weeks ago, I noticed it was gone, but I thought perhaps I had misplaced it. Now I knew the truth. Sophie had been planning this for some time. She hadn't stumbled upon temptation. She had sought it. The key slid into the lock with a quiet click. My heart pounded. I could have stopped her then. I could have shouted, taken the box away. But something inside me whispered, "Wait, let her see. Let her learn what greed leads to." She opened the lid slowly, her breath hitching, her hands shaking. I could almost see her anticipation, the way her mind must have been filled with images of gold necklaces, glittering rings, heirlooms she could take for herself. But when the lid finally lifted, her breath caught in her throat, because what lay inside was not what she expected at all. Her body stiffened. Her smile vanished. Her hands froze in place as her eyes fell upon the contents of the box. She sat there in silence, staring, unable to process what she had just uncovered. And that, my dear ones, was the moment everything began to change. She sat there, frozen, her eyes wide as the shadows from the fireplace danced across her face. For a moment, I thought she might scream, but no sound came out of her mouth. Instead, she simply stared, as if the box had swallowed her voice along with her greed. Inside, on the very top, was not gold or diamond or glittering pearls. No, resting gently upon a folded cloth was a faded photograph, its corners curled with age. It was of a young man in uniform, standing proudly in front of a tall oak tree. His eyes were the same deep brown as mine, his jawline strong, his smile faint but warm. It was my brother, Edward. He had gone to war when I was just a girl, and he never returned. For years my parents searched for news, for hope, for anything, but all they ever received was a letter stamped and cold. Missing, presumed, dead. Yet here, in my jewelry box, lay the photograph he had sent me on his last day at home, the only piece of him that remained in this world. Beneath it was another photo, this one of me and my husband on our wedding day. Sophie's eyes darted between the faces, confusion written across her features. I could see her thinking, why would she hide these? Where's the gold? Where's the money? She dug further, her greed pushing her past the sentiment she couldn't understand. She lifted the cloth, and beneath it she found the real weight of the box. Not jewels, but letters. Dozens of them, tied with faded ribbon. Some were my mother's, written in her delicate script, words of love and sorrow. Some were mine, letters I had written to Edward during the war, but never sent. I had poured my fears, my hopes, my secrets into those pages, thinking one day he might read them. He never did, but I kept them, locked away, because letting them go felt like letting him go forever. Sophie's hands trembled as she opened one, She skimmed the words, her lips moving silently, and I could see the impatience in her eyes. This wasn't what she wanted. She wasn't looking for my grief, my history, my pain. She was looking for treasure. But then, she reached the bottom of the box, and there, wrapped in a dark velvet cloth, was something I had not touched in decades. She unwrapped it slowly, and when she saw it, her face drained of color. It wasn't a necklace or a bracelet. It was a small pistol. Her breath hitched sharply, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She looked over her shoulder toward me, just to check if I was truly asleep. I kept still, though my heart thundered so loud, I thought she must hear it. The pistol was old, polished but worn, a relic from another time. It had belonged to my husband's father, a man who carried it during the war and left it to my husband with strict instructions. Keep it safe. Use it only when there is no other choice. My husband had never touched it, and after he died, I locked it away. Not because I feared it, but because it reminded me of how fragile safety really is. Sophie held it in her hands, her fingers shaking. I could see the panic in her face. She hadn't expected this. Perhaps in that moment, she realized that what people lock away is rarely what you imagine. Sometimes it isn't wealth at all. It's the pieces of a life too painful, too dangerous to keep in the open. She set the pistol back down quickly, as if it had burned her skin. Then her eyes fell on a smaller envelope, tucked beneath the velvet. She reached for it, her curiosity stronger than her fear. She opened it, pulled out the folded paper, and began to read. Her face changed. The greed vanished. The fear deepened. And then came something else. Something that looked like guilt. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes darting back and forth across the page. I knew which letter she was holding. It was the one I had written for my son, Daniel, years ago, but never given to him. The truth I had kept locked away, because I feared it would destroy him. A truth Sophie had no right to read. The words on that page revealed more than she was prepared to know. They told of a decision I had made when Daniel was a baby, a decision I had sworn to carry with me to the grave. And now, in her greedy little hands, that truth was no longer mine alone. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, the paper trembling between her fingers. She looked toward me again, almost certain now that I must be awake. But still, I did not move. I wanted to see what she would do. Would she put the letter back and lock the box, pretending she had never seen it? Would she confront me in the morning, demand answers that were not hers to have? Or would she use what she had found to her advantage, to wedge herself deeper between me and my son? She sat there for what felt like hours, frozen in her thoughts, her face pale and twisted, with something between shock and triumph. And that, my dear ones, is where everything began to unravel, because from the moment Sophie opened that jewelry box, the secrets I had guarded for a lifetime were no longer mine to keep. So if you want to know what happened next, stay with me, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story with others. And tell me in the comments, what do you think Sophie will do with what she found? Will she reveal it to Daniel, or will she keep it to herself? The answer will change everything. My dear ones, when I look back on that night, I sometimes wonder, what if I had stopped her? What if I had risen from my chair, taken the box from her hands, and locked it away again? Perhaps things would have turned out differently. But no, life does not bend for our what ifs. It only moves forward. Whether we are ready or not, Sophie sat there with the letter trembling in her hands, her eyes flicking back and forth, as though she couldn't believe what she was reading. I could see her chest rise and fall quickly. Her lips parted as if she wanted to call out, but no sound came. She wasn't expecting this. She had broken into that box, hoping for gold, and instead, she had stumbled upon a truth too heavy to carry. At last, she stuffed the letter back into the envelope, shoved it beneath the others, and closed the box with a sharp click. She held it tight against her chest, staring at me one final time to check if I was awake. My body remained still, my breathing steady, though inside I was burning. My secrets were no longer mine. She crept back to the wardrobe, slid the box inside, and shut the door. The floorboards groaned under her weight as she tiptoed out of the room, closing the door behind her. For a long time, I sat there in the dark, my eyes still half closed, my heart aching. The next morning, the air in the house felt heavier. Sophie avoided me at breakfast. She poured Daniel's coffee, placed toast in front of him, but her eyes flickered constantly toward me, sharp and cautious. I said nothing. I buttered my bread, sipped my tea, and pretended to be the frail old woman she thought I was. But inside, I was waiting to see what she would do. Days passed, and she grew restless. She hovered near Daniel more than usual, whispering to him in corners, her hand on his arm, her smile too sweet to be real. Daniel looked puzzled, even uneasy, but said nothing. I knew she was planning something. Greed never sleeps. It only changes its mask. One evening, as Daniel sat reading the newspaper, Sophie sat beside him, her hand on his knee. "Darling," she began, her voice soft and honeyed, "don't you ever wonder why your mother never talks about the past? Why she keeps everything locked away?" Daniel lowered the paper, frowning. "What do you mean?" "Oh, come on," she said with a little laugh. "That box in her room. Don't you think it's strange, the way she guards it? Haven't you ever asked what's inside?" My son sighed. "It's her business, Sophie. Whatever's in there is private. Private." The word stung me even from across the room. But Sophie wasn't finished. She leaned closer, her voice lowering to a whisper I could just barely catch. "What if it's something you need to know? What if she's keeping things from you?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Sophie," his tone was warning, but his eyes betrayed him. A seed had been planted. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt the weight of the secret pressing down on me. For years I had locked it away, believing it would die with me. But now, Sophie had dragged it back into the light, and so I knew what was coming. 2 nights later, I heard their footsteps outside my room. Daniel's heavier, Sophie's lighter. The door creaked open, and there they were, my son and his wife, standing in the moonlight. "Mum," Daniel said softly, "we need to talk." I sat up slowly, pulling my shawl around my shoulders. "About what, my dear?" His eyes flickered to Sophie, then back to me. "About the box." There it was, the moment I had dreaded for decades. The box, the truth. I looked at Sophie. She stood smugly, her arms crossed, a little smile playing on her lips. She thought she had won. She thought she had finally driven a wedge between me and my son. But she didn't know what the truth really was, and neither did Daniel. My hands trembled as I reached for the wardrobe. I pulled out the jewelry box, set it gently on my lap, and turned the key in the lock. The click echoed through the room like a gunshot. I looked at Daniel, my eyes burning. "You want the truth, my son? Then you shall have it." And as I lifted the lid, the secrets I had carried for a lifetime began to rise to the surface. The box sat heavy on my lap, its brass corners glinting faintly in the moonlight. For years it had guarded the pieces of my life that I couldn't bring myself to speak of. And now, with my son's eyes on me, eyes filled with confusion, suspicion, and a trace of hurt, I knew the time had come. I ran my fingers over the wood, feeling every groove and scratch. It was almost as if the box itself was alive, as if it knew it was about to surrender its burden. Daniel shifted uneasily, his brows furrowed, while Sophie stood behind him with a faint smirk curling at her lips. She thought she had won. She thought the truth inside this box would turn my son against me forever. I opened the lid slowly. The familiar scent of old paper and velvet rose up, filling the room with a ghost of the past. On top lay the photograph of my brother Edward, in his uniform, his proud smile frozen in time. Daniel's eyes softened as he leaned closer. "Who's this?" he asked quietly. "Your uncle," I whispered. "My brother. He went to war before you were born. He never came back." Daniel frowned, taking the photograph gently into his hands. You never told me. There are many things I never told you," I admitted. My voice cracked, but I steadied myself, because I thought they would only bring you pain, and because some truths, Daniel, are too heavy to lay on young shoulders. Sophie shifted impatiently. "That's touching," she said dryly. "But that can't be all. Keep going." Her words cut me, but I ignored her. I removed the letters, tied in their faded ribbons, and placed them aside. Beneath them was the velvet cloth. I hesitated, then unwrapped it, revealing the pistol. Daniel's eyes widened. "Mum, what on earth are you doing with that?" "It was your grandfather's," I said softly. "Passed down to your father. He never used it, and neither did I. It has slept in this box for decades. But it reminds me, safety is never guaranteed. Sometimes the world takes more than it gives." Daniel stared at the weapon as if it might leap out and strike him. Sophie, however, looked almost delighted. "See, Daniel, doesn't this strike you as strange? What else is she hiding?" I felt my blood boil, but I held my tongue. Instead, I reached deeper into the box and pulled out the envelope, the one Sophie had already stolen a glimpse of. My fingers trembled as I placed it in Daniel's hands. "Read it," I whispered. He hesitated, then unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the words, his face changing with every line. Confusion, shock, disbelief, pain. When at last he reached the end, his hands shook, and he looked up at me as though seeing me for the first time. "Mum!" His voice broke. "Is this true?" Tears burned my eyes. "Yes, my son, every word." The letter revealed the secret I had buried for so long. Daniel was not his father's son. His father, the man who raised him, loved him, cared for him. That man had married me, knowing the truth. Daniel's real father had been another man, a brief love from before. A man who had left before he even knew of Daniel's existence. My husband had taken Daniel as his own, never once treating him as anything less than his child. And I had locked the truth away, believing it would destroy the bond between father and son, if ever revealed. Daniel staggered back, the letter slipping from his hands. His face had gone pale, his breath uneven. "All these years, all this time, you never told me." I reached for him, my voice breaking. "Because it didn't matter, Daniel. Because the man who raised you was your father in every way that counted. Because love, not blood, makes a family." Sophie's smirk widened. She stepped forward, her voice sharp and cruel. "So you see, Daniel, she's been lying to you your entire life, keeping secrets, hiding the truth. Can you really trust anything she says?" Daniel turned to her, his jaw tight. "Stop it, Sophie." She blinked surprised. "I'm only saying," I said stop. His voice thundered through the room, silencing her. He turned back to me, his eyes full of conflict. "Why, Mum, why didn't you trust me enough to tell me?" My tears finally fell, rolling down my wrinkled cheeks. "Because I was afraid, my son. Afraid that you would hate me. Afraid that you would see me as a liar instead of a mother who only wanted to protect you. Every day I carried that fear, and every day I chose silence." The room was thick with silence. The fire in the hearth crackled, the rain tapped against the window, and the clock ticked on, unbothered by the storm of human hearts. Daniel sat heavily on the edge of the bed, his face in his hands. Sophie hovered near him, trying to put her arm around his shoulder, but he shrugged her off. Her smile faltered, and in that moment, I knew she hadn't exposed the truth to heal him. She hadn't done it out of love. She had done it to break us apart, to turn him against me. But family, my dear ones, family is stronger than greed. Daniel lifted his head at last, his eyes red but clear. He looked at me, then at Sophie. His voice was quiet but firm. "Mum may have kept a secret," he said, "but she did it out of love. You, Sophie, you went into her room, stole her key, opened her box, and read what was never meant for you. That's not love. That's betrayal." Sophie's face drained of color. "Daniel, I was only trying to—" "Enough." His tone cut like a blade. And in that moment, I saw it. The crack in Sophie's mask. The flicker of fear in her eyes. She had thought the truth would be her weapon. But instead, it became her undoing. My dear ones, that night was only the beginning. The box had been opened, the secrets released, and the balance of our home forever changed. But Sophie was not finished. No, greed is never finished. And what she tried next? Well, that is a story you must hear. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story. And in the comments, tell me, what do you think Sophie will do now that Daniel has seen through her? The truth may have wounded him, but it also opened his eyes. The night after Daniel confronted Sophie, the house was unusually silent. Too silent. Normally, after such a storm of emotions, there would have been the sound of tears, of doors slamming, of heavy footsteps pacing the corridors. But Sophie, she was calm, too calm. I knew that kind of calm, my dear ones. It was not the peace that follows a storm. It was the eye of it, a false stillness, hiding what was yet to come. I sat in my rocking chair by the window, the jewelry box still beside me. Though now lighter, emptied of its secrets, I could feel Sophie's presence in the walls, in the shadows, in the way the floorboards creaked differently beneath her step. She had lost the battle, but not the war. When Daniel left for work the next morning, Sophie lingered at the doorway. She smiled at me, but her smile never touched her eyes. "You must be tired, Mum. Why don't you rest more during the day? You'll need your strength at your age." Her words dripped with false sweetness. I only nodded, keeping my eyes on my knitting, though I hadn't moved a stitch in minutes. As soon as Daniel's car disappeared down the lane, Sophie turned on her heel and marched back inside. She didn't waste a second. She stormed into the kitchen, yanked open cupboards, slammed drawers. She was searching, hunting. I followed quietly, leaning on my cane. "What are you looking for, Sophie?" She spun around, her eyes wild. "Where is it?" "Where is what, dear?" "Don't play games with me, old woman." Her voice cracked, venomous. "There's more, isn't there? That letter can't be the only thing. What else have you been hiding?" I held her gaze, calm though my heart pounded. Everything that mattered was in that box. "And you've already seen it." She stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "You think you've won, don't you? You think Daniel will always choose you over me. But men are weak, and love fades. When I show him who you really are, when I prove how dangerous you are, he'll have no choice but to cut you out." Her words chilled me. Dangerous? The seed of her plan revealed itself in those very syllables. That evening, when Daniel returned, Sophie wept in his arms, her voice trembling with manufactured fear. "She scares me, Daniel. Your mother. She keeps weapons in the house. She hides things. She has violent moods. I don't feel safe here anymore." Daniel's face hardened, torn between love for his wife and the truth he had begun to see. "Sophie, please. Mum has never—" "She threatened me," Sophie cried, gripping his shirt as though for dear life. "When you weren't here, she stood over me with that cane and said I would regret it if I ever touched her things again." I gasped, shaking my head. "Daniel, that's not true. I would never." But Sophie buried her face in his chest, sobbing. Her tears wet his shirt, and his resolve wavered. I saw it, that flicker of doubt. Oh, my dear ones, how easy it is for lies to take root when wrapped in tears. That night, as I lay awake, I heard them whispering in the next room, Sophie's voice soft and trembling, Daniel's low and uncertain. Every now and then, her words floated through the wall. "Dangerous, unstable, can't trust her." I clutched the jewelry box to my chest, though it was no shield. For the first time, I felt the walls of my own home closing in on me. The box that once held my secrets now held only memories. But in Sophie's hands, even memories could be twisted into weapons. The next morning, Daniel looked weary, shadows under his eyes. He kissed my forehead gently, but his voice carried an edge. "Mom, maybe it would be good for you to take a little trip. Visit Aunt Margaret for a while. You know, get some fresh air, a change of scenery." My heart sank. "Daniel, are you asking me to leave?" "No, of course not," he said quickly, though he couldn't quite meet my eyes. I think it might be good for everyone." And there it was, Sophie's wedge, driving us apart, inch by inch. But my dear ones, I am no helpless old woman. Age may bend the back, but it sharpens the mind. I knew if I left, Sophie would win. She would sink her claws deeper into Daniel's heart, and I might never find my way back. So I stayed. And I watched. One afternoon, as Sophie went into the garden, I slipped quietly into her room. It was not my way to pry, but she had crossed every line, and I had no choice. In the drawer of her dressing table, beneath silken scarves, I found what I feared, a small vial, dark liquid inside, labeled with a name I hadn't heard in years. It was not medicine. It was poison. My hand trembled as I placed it back. My mind raced. What was she planning? Who was her target? Me or Daniel? I returned to my chair, heart pounding. The pieces were falling into place. Sophie's calmness, her false tears, her growing desperation. She wanted more than jewelry, more than secrets. She wanted the house, the inheritance, everything. And for that, she needed me gone. That evening, I sat with Daniel by the fire, my knitting untouched once again. "My son," I whispered, my voice heavy with warning. "Be careful of the company you keep in your own home. Not every tear is pure. Not every smile is honest." He looked at me, pain flickering in his eyes. "Mum, please don't make me choose." But the truth, my dear ones, is that he would have to choose. And soon, because Sophie's next move was already in motion. And what she tried to do at dinner the following night shook me to my very bones. So my dear children, if you are still listening, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this story, and share it with others who love to hear the truth wrapped in mystery. And tell me in the comments, do you think Sophie will dare to go through with her dark plan? Or will Daniel open his eyes before it's too late? The night of the dinner, the house seemed to hum with unease. The rain had ceased, but the silence that followed was even heavier. Sophie moved about the kitchen with a strange cheerfulness, humming a tune I didn't recognize. Her hands were too steady, her smile too fixed. I sat at the table, my cane resting against the chair, my eyes never leaving her. She placed the dishes down with care. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a bottle of wine she claimed to have saved for a special night. Daniel entered, his shoulders slumped from work, but his face lit up when he saw the spread. "You didn't have to do all this," he said softly, kissing Sophie's cheek. Her laughter rang too sweet. "Nonsense, we deserve a nice family meal. Don't we, Mum?" Her eyes flicked to me, and for just a second, the sweetness slipped, replaced by something sharp. We sat down. Sophie poured the wine, filling Daniel's glass generously, then mine. Her own glass she left barely touched. I noticed. Oh yes, I noticed. Daniel ate heartily, grateful for the peace after so much tension. I, however, barely touched my food. My fork scraped lightly against the plate as I pretended to nibble, all the while watching her. At one point, Sophie leaned across the table, her voice light. "Mum, you really should drink some of your wine. It'll help you sleep tonight." My fingers tightened around the glass. The dark vial I'd found in her drawer burned in my memory. The way she poured Daniel's drink first, how her eyes lingered on me now. I set the glass down. "I think not, Sophie. Wine never did sit well with me." Her smile froze, brittle as porcelain. But it's a celebration. Then, you and Daniel enjoy it. She hesitated, her eyes darting to my son, who was already halfway through his glass. A flicker of panic flashed across her face before she covered it with another smile. And in that moment, I knew the poison wasn't meant for me. It was meant for Daniel. My heart thundered. Every instinct screamed to knock the glass from his hand, to shout the truth, but I held myself steady. If I accused her now, without proof, she would twist it into another lie, another tale of paranoia. No, I needed him to see her mask slip for himself, so I waited. After dinner, Daniel excused himself to fetch some papers from his study. Sophie gathered the plates, her hands shaking ever so slightly. I followed her into the kitchen, leaning on my cane, my voice calm but sharp. "You think you're clever, don't you?" I said quietly. She froze, her back to me. "I don't know what you mean." "You poisoned the wine." "Not mine. His." She spun around, her eyes blazing. For a heartbeat, she looked like the cornered creature she was. "You can't prove anything. He'll believe me before he believes you. He always will. Will he?" I tilted my head. "You've underestimated him, Sophie. A heart raised in love knows the difference between truth and poison. It may take time, but it knows." Her jaw clenched, her mask cracking. "You're in my way, old woman. Everything should have been mine by now. The house, the money, the respect. But you just won't die quietly, will you?" I stepped closer, my cane tapping against the tiles. "No, Sophie, I won't. Because this house isn't built on greed. It's built on memory, sacrifice, and love. Things you will never understand." Before she could reply, Daniel's voice came from the doorway. "What's going on?" We both turned. He stood there, papers in hand, his eyes flicking between us. Sophie's face softened instantly, her tears returning on command. She accused me again, Daniel. She keeps saying terrible things." But her words faltered when Daniel's gaze dropped to the counter, where the empty vial sat. Its cork loosened, its bitter scent faint but unmistakable. His eyes darkened. "What is that?" Sophie stammered, her hands trembling. It's nothing, just medicine." "For whom?" His voice was cold. Her mask shattered then, completely. "For you," she spat, her face twisted with rage. "For you, so I could finally have what I deserve. You think she loves you. She lied to you your whole life. She kept secrets. She treated you like a child. But me, I could have given you everything if she hadn't poisoned you against me." Daniel stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. "Get out," she blinked. "What?" I said, "Get out!" His voice thundered, louder than I had ever heard. "This house, my home, my family. You don't deserve any of it. Pack your things and leave before I call the police." Sophie's face crumpled, but not with sorrow, with rage. She grabbed her coat, muttering curses under her breath, and stormed out into the night. The slam of the door echoed through the house like the closing of a tomb. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Daniel's shaky breath. He turned to me then, his eyes red, his shoulders trembling. "Mum," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have believed you from the start." I took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You saw the truth when it mattered, my son. That is enough." We sat together by the fire until the embers burned low, the shadows softening around us. The house felt lighter, though the scars of betrayal lingered. And as I looked at him, his hand warm in mine, I knew that no matter what storms came our way, we would weather them, because love, my dear ones, is stronger than greed. But I also knew Sophie was not gone forever. People like her don't vanish so easily. They wait, they plot, they return, and the day she came back, she brought something with her that neither Daniel nor I could have ever expected. My dear children, if you've stayed with me until now, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this story, and share it so others can join our family here. And tell me in the comments, do you think Sophie will try to come back for revenge? Because the story is not yet finished. The weeks after Sophie's departure were quiet, almost too quiet. The house, once filled with tension and whispered lies, breathed again. Daniel and I settled into a rhythm that felt almost like healing. He worked, I tended the roses in the garden, and in the evenings we shared tea by the fire, speaking at last with the honesty we had been denied for so long. But silence, my dear ones, is not always peace. Sometimes it is only the pause before the storm returns. One Sunday morning, as the church bells rang faintly from the village, a letter arrived. The envelope bore no name, no return address. Daniel placed it on the table with a frown. Strange. I wasn't expecting anything. I watched as he opened it. His face paled as his eyes scanned the page. Mom, it's from her. Sophie's handwriting flowed across the paper, sweet as honey but sharp as a knife. Daniel, my love, you've misunderstood me. I was never trying to hurt you. Your mother twisted everything. I've been away, reflecting, and I realize now how much I need you, how much we belong together. Please meet me. Alone? She gave a time, a place. The old inn at the edge of the village. Daniel crushed the letter in his fist. She's out of her mind if she thinks I'll go. I touched his arm gently. She's not out of her mind, my son. She's calculating. If she cannot have you, she will try to ruin you. And if she cannot ruin you, she may try to ruin me. His jaw tightened. Then we ignore her. She's finished here. But my dear ones, people like Sophie do not vanish when ignored. They grow like weeds in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to choke the roots of the flowers they envy. That evening, as I watered the roses, I sensed it, the faintest movement beyond the garden wall, a shadow where none should be. I turned, but the lane was empty. Only the ivy rustled in the breeze. I knew then, she had returned. Days later, small things began to change. The milkman swore he delivered 2 bottles, yet only one was found on the step. A photograph of Daniel and me disappeared from the mantelpiece. The back gate, always locked, was found ajar. Daniel dismissed it as coincidence. But I, with the eyes of age sharpened by years of watching, knew better. Sophie was circling us, like a wolf too cowardly to strike yet too hungry to leave. Then one night, as the clock struck midnight, a knock came at the door. Daniel stirred, groggy, but I was already awake. I moved to the window, pulling the curtain back ever so slightly. There she was, Sophie, standing in the rain, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes burning through the dark. Mum, Daniel whispered behind me. Don't open it. But she didn't wait. Her voice rose through the storm, desperate, shrill. Daniel, please, I need you. Let me explain. He shouted back through the door. Go home, Sophie. You're not welcome here. Her fists pounded the wood. She's poisoned you against me. She's the one who's dangerous, not me. Ask her about the second box. Ask her. Daniel. My blood ran cold. Second box. Daniel turned to me, confusion etched on his face. What is she talking about? I felt the strength drain from my legs, and I sank into my chair. My hands trembled. I hoped, I prayed she would never find out. Because yes, my dear ones, there was another box, smaller, hidden away not with my jewelry, but beneath the floorboards of my old sewing room. A box that contained not trinkets, but the one truth I had buried even deeper than Daniel's parentage. A truth that, if revealed, could tear apart not just my family, but everything I had ever protected. Daniel's eyes searched mine, hurt and suspicion rising again. Mum, tell me she's lying. Tears welled in my eyes. She's not. But I swear, Daniel, it is not what she wants you to believe. That box holds a truth, yes, but not one meant to harm you. Sophie's voice rang out again, shrill with triumph. See, she admits it. She's hiding even more. She'll never stop lying to you, Daniel. She'll keep secrets until the day she dies. I reached for my son's hand, desperate. Listen to me. I hid that box to protect you. To protect us both. If Sophie gets her hands on it, she'll twist it just like she twisted everything else. Please, my son. Trust me. But Daniel's face was pale, torn. His loyalty stretched to breaking. Outside, Sophie's fists beat against the door, her voice rising into the storm like a curse. And I knew in that moment the battle was no longer for the jewelry box. It was for the second box, the one Sophie had somehow discovered, the one that carried the darkest secret of all. My dear children, if you are listening closely, do not forget to subscribe, like, and share this story. And tell me, what do you think lies inside the second box? For what Sophie is about to uncover may shock you more than anything yet. The storm outside battered the windows, but the storm inside our home was worse. Sophie's voice screeched through the door like a vulture circling its prey. Open it, Daniel. Make her show you the second box. She's been lying your whole life. Daniel's hand hovered over the lock, his face torn between anger, fear, and love. Mum, please, tell me the truth. What is in that second box? My chest felt heavy, as though the years themselves pressed down on me. Not tonight, I whispered. Not like this. Not with her outside waiting to snatch it and twist it into poison. If I show you, it will be on my terms, not hers. But Sophie's shrill laugh cut through the wood. See? She's hiding it even now. She'll never tell you willingly. She's afraid because it will destroy her perfect little mask. Daniel's shoulders sagged. Mum, if there's something else, I need to know. I reached for his hand, my frail fingers closing around his strong ones. You will, my son, but not because she demands it. Because you deserve the truth, given with love, not thrown at you like a weapon. Outside, Sophie screamed again, pounded the door, then finally, after what felt like an eternity, her footsteps retreated into the storm. The silence that followed was thick and trembling. Daniel and I did not sleep that night. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames, and I sat across from him, my knitting untouched once again. The weight of the second box pressed against my heart. The next morning, I led him to the old sewing room. The floorboards creaked beneath our steps, the smell of dust and lavender lingering in the air. I pointed to the corner where the rug lay faded with age. Lift it. Daniel knelt, pulling back the rug. His eyes widened when he saw the faint outline of the trap door. He pried it open, the hinges groaning in protest, and there it was, a small wooden box, darker than the jewelry one, bound with an iron clasp. His hands shook as he lifted it. Mum, what's inside? I placed my hand over the lid. My throat tightened. The truth about your father. The whole truth. Daniel froze. But you already told me. That letter told you part of it, I whispered. But not everything. He opened the clasp with trembling fingers. Inside, instead of jewels or weapons, lay a collection of letters, neatly folded, tied with a black ribbon. On top rested a single photograph of me, much younger, holding a baby in my arms. But the man beside me was not the husband Daniel had known. Daniel's breath caught. Who is he? I closed my eyes, the memories burning. Your real father, not just a man who left before he knew. He was someone dangerous, a man who lived a double life. When I discovered what he truly was, I ran. I chose safety over him for you, for me. Your stepfather, the man who raised you. He knew all of it, and he swore to protect us both. That is why I hid these letters. Because your real father was not a hero. He was a man capable of terrible things. Daniel's hand shook as he held the photograph. His voice broke. So all this time, you weren't just hiding my parentage. You were hiding him. Tears blurred my vision. Yes, because I didn't want his shadow to touch you. I wanted you to grow with the love of a good man, not the curse of a dangerous one. If Sophie had gotten this box, she would have painted me as a liar again. But worse, she would have painted you as the son of a criminal. Daniel pressed his hand over his mouth, breathing hard. The fire in his eyes was not anger now, but pain and betrayal. Why didn't you tell me when I was older? When I could understand? Because I was afraid, I whispered. Afraid the truth would consume you. Afraid you would go searching for him. And most of all, afraid you would look in the mirror and see him staring back. The room fell silent, the letters lying between us like a chasm. For a moment, I thought I had lost him, that Sophie's words, combined with my silence, would finally break the bond we had left. But then, Daniel set the photograph down. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face, and whispered, "Mum, you're the only parent I've ever needed. Whatever blood runs through my veins, it doesn't matter. Because you raised me with love. That makes me yours." I broke then, sobbing into his arms, clinging to him as though he was still that little boy I once rocked to sleep. The secret I had carried for decades was finally out, but instead of breaking us, it bound us closer. Yet even as we held each other, I felt it, the presence beyond the window, a shadow moving in the garden, watching. Sophie. She hadn't gone. She had been listening, and now she knew everything. My dear children, you must stay with me for the next part. For Sophie's return will not be with pleading letters or desperate knocks. No, this time she will come with knowledge sharp as a knife, and she will use the truth not just to wound, but to destroy. So make sure you subscribe, like, and share this story. And in the comments, tell me, do you think Sophie will use what she heard to blackmail us? Or will she reveal the secret to the world, no matter the cost? Because what she does next may change everything. The night Daniel and I opened the second box, I slept little. My mind replayed every shadow at the window, every crack in the floorboards, every whisper of wind that might have been her. I knew Sophie. She was like a snake, silent, patient, and always waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The following morning, Daniel went into town to fetch supplies, leaving me alone in the house. I brewed my tea, my hands trembling as I poured it. That was when I heard it, a soft knock at the door, not frantic, not desperate, but calm, calculated. When I opened it, Sophie stood there. Her coat was dry, despite the dew on the grass, her eyes sharp as glass. She didn't ask to come in. She walked past me, her heels clicking against the old wooden floor, as though she already owned the place. "You think you've won, don't you?" she said softly, almost sweetly. "You think Daniel forgives you, but he doesn't know that I know, and you can't hide from me anymore." I gripped the edge of the table. "Leave this house, Sophie. You have no power here," she laughed, low and bitter. "No power? Oh, Grandma, I have all the power now. I know who Daniel's real father is. I know the truth about your perfect little family. Imagine what the neighbors would say, what the church would whisper, what Daniel's colleagues would think if I let it slip, that his father was—" "Stop," I hissed, my heart pounding. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," she said, her lips curling, "because you didn't just lie to Daniel. You lied to everyone. You built your life on secrets. And secrets, my dear, are currency. The question is, how much are you willing to pay me to keep yours safe?" I felt my knees weaken. Extortion. She had taken her greed to the final, ugliest step. "You're a fool if you think money will buy your silence forever," I whispered. Her eyes glittered. "It's not just money I want." My stomach turned. "Then what?" She leaned closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "I want the house, this house, Daniel's inheritance. Give me the deed, and I'll keep my lips sealed. Otherwise," she let the threat linger, sweet as poison. I gripped my locket, steadying myself. "You're blackmailing your own family." Her smile widened. "Family is just another word for leverage." That night, I didn't tell Daniel what Sophie had said. My heart ached with the burden of yet another secret, but I couldn't, not yet. He was fragile, still reeling from the truth about his father. If I told him Sophie's scheme now, he might break, but Sophie was not finished. The next few days, she made herself a constant shadow in our lives. She arrived unannounced, bringing little gifts for Daniel. Baking pies she claimed were just for the family, all the while whispering poisoned words into his ear. I watched as she touched his arm, lingered close, told him how unfair it was that his mother kept so much from him. And Daniel, oh my sweet boy, he tried to resist, but doubt crept back into his eyes, the same doubt Sophie had planted weeks before. One evening, I overheard them in the hallway. "She's not telling you everything, Daniel," Sophie murmured. I heard her say it myself. Your real father wasn't just dangerous. He was a criminal. Do you want to spend your life wondering what else she's hiding? Or do you want to know everything, once and for all? Daniel's voice cracked. I don't know who to believe anymore. My heart shattered. That was her plan. Not just to take the house. Not just to blackmail me, but to rip us apart until I had no one left. That night, I unlocked the second box again, spreading the letters across my lap. I read them through tear-blurred eyes. The confessions, the apologies, the warnings my real husband had written from the shadows of his double life. Letters I had hidden to protect Daniel. Letters Sophie would twist like knives. I knew then what I had to do. If Sophie wanted war, I would not fight her with money or fear. I would fight her with truth. The next morning, I called Daniel into the sitting room. My voice shook, but my resolve was iron. "My son," I said, "tonight I will tell you everything, every secret, every lie, every shadow of our past. You deserve the whole story, from me, not from her." His eyes widened, but he nodded slowly. For the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of trust return. But what I did not see was the figure outside the window, Sophie, pressed against the glass, listening. And as I promised Daniel the truth, Sophie smiled in the dark, because she knew, when all was revealed, she would find a way to twist it into her victory. My dear children, do not go anywhere. What I reveal in the next part will be the heaviest truth of all, the truth that Sophie is waiting to weaponize. Subscribe, like, and share this story, for we are about to step into the deepest shadows of the past. And tell me in the comments, do you believe the truth will save Daniel and me, or will it finally destroy us? That evening, the house felt heavier than ever before. The fire crackled weakly in the hearth, but its warmth did little to ease the chill crawling up my spine. Daniel sat across from me, his face pale, his hands clasped tightly as though bracing for a storm. I placed the second box on the table between us. The letters rustled faintly inside, as though the ghosts of the past were eager to speak at last. "My son," I began softly, "you've been patient with me longer than you should have. Tonight I will tell you everything, not half-truths, not protection, the full story, no matter how much it hurts." Daniel's eyes searched mine. "Mum, I just need to know who I am, who he was." I opened the box, my fingers trembling. I drew out the first letter, yellowed and brittle, written in the sharp hand of a man who once made my heart tremble for very different reasons. "Your father," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "was not the man you think. His name wasn't even the one I told you growing up. He had two names, two lives. To the world, he was a businessman. To me, he was a lover, a husband, the father of my child. But behind the curtain, he was involved in things I cannot even speak aloud without feeling unclean." Daniel swallowed hard. "Criminal things?" "Yes," I said, tears burning my eyes. "Smuggling, laundering, things that brought wealth to our table, but danger to our doorstep." At first, I didn't know. He was charming, kind. He made me feel safe, until one night, the police came knocking. That's when I learned everything. And that's when I ran. I took you, and I never looked back. I placed the letter in Daniel's hand. He read silently, his eyes flicking across the page, his jaw clenched. He wrote that he loved you, loved me, that he only did those things to secure our future. I nodded. That is what he told himself. But love cannot excuse poison, my son. He thought his sins were gifts. I could not let you grow up under that shadow. So I buried the letters. I built a new life with the man who became your father in every way that mattered. And I swore you would never have to know. Daniel's hand shook as he placed the letter back. And Sophie, she knows all this. Yes, I whispered. She was listening the night I showed you. And she will use it against us. She will whisper in your ear that blood is destiny, that you are his son, not the man you've grown to be. She will try to turn this truth into chains. He looked up at me then, eyes glistening. And what do you believe, Mum? Do you believe I am him? That I will become like him? I reached across the table, cupping his face in my wrinkled hands. No, you are my son. You are the man who sat by me when I was sick, who worked 2 jobs to keep this roof from crumbling, who still calls me every morning just to hear my voice. That man, your real father, gave you life. But you, Daniel, you gave it meaning. He broke then, tears streaming down his face. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. Thank you, Mum, for telling me, for protecting me, for choosing me over him. In that moment, I felt the weight lift, just a little. I had carried this secret for decades, and now it was finally spoken, finally shared. I thought perhaps, just perhaps, we could heal. But healing was not what Sophie wanted. Because even as Daniel held me, a slip of paper slid under the door. Daniel noticed first, his brow furrowing. He picked it up, unfolded it, and read aloud. It was a note, a threat. If you don't hand over the deed to the house by the end of the week, everyone in this town will know the truth. And Daniel will be the son of a criminal forever. Daniel's face went white. My blood froze. She had written it in black ink, bold and merciless. Enough, Daniel growled, his voice shaking with anger. She's gone too far. This isn't about family anymore. This is blackmail. I touched his arm. My son, be careful. She wants to provoke you. She wants you angry, reckless. That's how she wins. But he was already on his feet, fists clenched. I'm not afraid of her. If she wants a war, she's got one. I wanted to stop him, to tell him not to fall into her trap. But as I looked at him, my son, caught between the truth of his blood and the love of his upbringing, I realized something. This battle was no longer mine to fight alone. Sophie thought the past would destroy him, but perhaps, just perhaps, it would awaken the strength in him she never expected. My dear children, the stage is set. The truth has been spoken, the threats laid bare, and the war for this family's soul has begun. Will Sophie succeed in tearing Daniel from me and taking the house? Or will the son I raised find the strength to defeat her once and for all? Stay with me for the next part, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story. And tell me in the comments, if you were in Daniel's place, would you fight Sophie head on, or would you take another path? Because the choice he makes next may save us, or ruin us forever. The night after Sophie's note arrived, I did not sleep. Every creak of the house made my heart leap. Every shadow felt like her presence. Daniel, however, was no longer a boy crushed by secrets. He was a man sharpening his resolve. She wants a war, he told me, pacing by the fire, fists clenched. Fine, she'll get one, but not on her terms. I watched him carefully, fear tugging at me. Daniel, listen to me. Anger is her weapon. If you fight her in rage, she will win. But if you fight her with wisdom, then maybe, just maybe, you'll turn her own poison back on her. He stopped, his eyes narrowing. Wisdom? I leaned closer, lowering my voice. There's one thing Sophie doesn't know, something not even you know. The deed to this house. It doesn't belong to me. Daniel blinked. What do you mean? I smiled faintly, my secret finally ripening. Years ago, when I feared what your real father might do, I transferred the deed, not to him, not even to your stepfather, to you. Legally, this house has been yours since you were 16 years old. I just never told you. His mouth fell open. Mine? Yes, I whispered. She's trying to blackmail me for something I cannot give her. Because it belongs to you. For a moment, Daniel stared at me, stunned. Then, slowly, a grin crept across his face. Then we have her. The next evening, Sophie returned, bold as ever, dressed in her finest coat, as though she were already the lady of the house. She dropped her handbag on the table and crossed her legs, smirking. Have you made your decision? She asked, her voice sweet as honey and sharp as glass. The deed or the truth becomes everyone's business. Daniel stood tall before her. Actually, Sophie, the deed isn't Mum's to give. Her brow furrowed. What? He tossed a folder onto the table. The official papers slid out, bearing his name in bold. The house has been mine for years. You've been threatening the wrong person. For the first time I saw Sophie falter. Her face went pale, her mouth opening and closing without words. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low and steady. You wanted power over my mother. You wanted to tear us apart, but you forgot something important. Blood doesn't define me. Love does. And no amount of blackmail will ever change that. Sophie's mask cracked then. The rage she had hidden behind her charm boiled over. She snatched the letters from the second box, waving them in the air. He's the son of a criminal. You think people won't care. You think they'll just look away when they find out what kind of man his father was. Daniel didn't flinch. Let them know. I don't care. Because whatever my father was, I am not him. I am my mother's son. Her face twisted, her victory slipping through her fingers. In a final act of desperation, she hurled the letters into the fire, thinking she would destroy the evidence, scorch our secrets, and leave us with nothing but ashes. But Daniel only laughed, a sound so steady, it startled even me. Those weren't the originals. They're safe where you'll never find them. Sophie froze. Her plan had unraveled completely. She turned to me then, her eyes wild, searching for some crack, some weakness. But I only shook my head. You lost, Sophie. Not because of me, because you underestimated love. And love, my dear, is stronger than greed. She screamed then, a sharp, ugly sound, and stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Her footsteps faded into the night, swallowed by the storm. Daniel sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt light, as though the ghosts of the past had finally been buried. But as the flames crackled and the house settled into silence, I couldn't help but wonder, was it truly over? The storm that night was fierce, rattling the shutters and whistling through the chimney. But inside our little sitting room, Daniel and I felt safer than we had in months. The truth was out, the past unburdened, Sophie's threats stripped of power. For the first time in so long, I thought perhaps we could heal. But peace, in this family, never lasted long. 2 nights later, just as dawn was breaking, there came another knock. Not soft, not polite. A furious pounding that shook the front door in its frame. Daniel rose quickly, his jaw tightening. It's her! I grabbed his arm. Be careful. He flung open the door, and there she stood, Sophie, her hair wild, her eyes bloodshot, clutching a small suitcase. She looked nothing like the polished woman who once preened at my table. She looked desperate. Daniel! She gasped, stepping inside without waiting. You have to listen to me. Daniel's face hardened. I've listened enough. But she fell to her knees, clutching his hand. No, you don't understand. I made a mistake. I thought I could control the truth, but it's bigger than me. Your father, your real father, he's not dead. The words struck the air like lightning. My breath caught. What are you saying? Sophie's voice cracked. I've been in contact with him. I found him. That's why I wanted the house. That's why I wanted leverage. He promised me everything if I delivered Daniel to him. Daniel staggered back, as though struck. His voice was hoarse. You mean he's alive? I felt my knees weaken. The room spinning. No, that can't be. He disappeared decades ago. Sophie nodded frantically. And he's been watching, waiting. He told me you'd eventually confess the truth. And when you did, I was to bring Daniel to him. He doesn't want your letters, or your jewelry, or your house. He wants his son. Daniel's face drained of color. Why now? Her voice broke into sobs. Because he's sick, dying, and he wants an heir. The silence that followed was deafening. I clutched the edge of my chair, my heart racing. My past, the man I had fled, the man whose shadow I had buried, was alive. And Sophie had made a deal with him. Daniel's voice was steel. And you were going to sell me to him, like property. Sophie's sobs grew louder. I was wrong. I thought it was my chance to be free, to have everything I wanted. But he's terrifying, Daniel. He knows things about me, about you. If I don't deliver, he'll ruin me. Please, help me. For the first time, I saw not greed in Sophie's eyes, but fear. Genuine, bone-deep fear. Daniel turned to me, his voice shaking. Mom, what do we do? I met his gaze, tears burning my eyes. We do what we've always done. We protect each other. We face the truth together. Daniel took a long, trembling breath, then turned back to Sophie. You'll tell me where he is, and then you'll leave. For good. She hesitated, then nodded, pulling a scrap of paper from her suitcase. An address, far from here, tucked in the countryside where the roads turn to dirt and the air grows heavy with silence. Daniel folded it, his face unreadable. We'll go, but not for him. For us. To end this once and for all. Sophie's eyes widened. Then you'll help me. No, Daniel said coldly. We'll save ourselves. What happens to you is none of my concern anymore. She sobbed again. But he turned away, pulling me into his arms. His voice was soft, but steady. Mum, you don't have to be afraid anymore. He doesn't own us. He never will. And for the first time, I believed him. Sophie left that morning, suitcase in hand, her shadow finally gone from our doorstep. Whether she went to him or ran from him, I do not know. I never saw her again. Daniel and I never visited the address. We burned it in the fireplace that night, watching the flames consume the last tie to the man who had haunted us for so long. And as the smoke rose, I whispered to the fire, You will not have my son. You will not have my life. From that day on, Daniel and I rebuilt what Sophie had tried to break. The secrets were no longer chains. They were scars. And scars, though ugly, are proof that wounds heal. So, my dear children, remember this. Greed will always try to take what love builds. Secrets will always fester in the dark. But if you cling to love, to truth, to the bonds that matter most, no shadow, not even the ghost of a dangerous past, can destroy you. And that is how the jewelry box, the letters, the shadows, and the threats finally led us here. Not broken, but whole. My story ends tonight, but yours perhaps begins now. So please, if you've walked this long road with me, subscribe to my channel, like this story, share it with those you love, and comment below if you discovered a secret that could change your whole family forever. Would you reveal it or bury it? Because sometimes the hardest choice is the one that saves us.